going back to a little systems terminology. One of the things, okay, we've talked about flows.
Yes.
We've talked about stocks.
Yes.
We've talked about Slack.
Yes.
Okay, now we're going to talk about how they interact.
Okay.
And this is a concept called feedback loop.
Okay.
Okay, now, good example of one type of feedback loop, which is called a positive or a reinforcing feedback loop,
Okay.
is the example of compound interest.
Yay.
Okay, yay, compound interest is a good thing. Okay, so you put money in to an investment. That investment, say, earns 20%. Okay, so you have a flow,
Yeah.
money in, 20% added, more flows out, right?
Terrific.
Okay, now what happens if you loop that back in to the system? So now what you earned 20% on, you put back into the system and you earn 100 or 20% on again.
Yeah. Good stuff happens.
Very good thing. Okay, this actually, the advertising industry of the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and mid 90s
Yes.
was a positive reinforcing loop. Company spends $1 on advertising, they get $5 out. They spend $5 on advertising and they get $25 out. They spend $25 on advertising and they get $125 out.
Oh, wow.
And it just keeps multiplying the marketing investment.
Interesting.
And the company gets huger and huger and huger and huger and huger. That's how it works.
Okay.
Okay? That's a positive reinforcing loop.
Okay.
Now, which basically a reinforcing loop just means that the output gets bigger over time.
Right.
Okay? Think of a negative reinforcing loop. Okay? You have a debt. And so you take out a loan to pay off the debt. And then you take on another loan to pay off the other debt.
Yeah.
And your debt just keeps on ballooning until you can no longer take out any loans, at which point
Bad news
you go
bears.
bankrupt.
Yeah.
There's actually a very, this doesn't happen often, but sometimes. This is actually, if you go to a casino and you play blackjack,
Okay.
and you put $100 down on blackjack, and if you play the odds right, it's about a 50-50 shot, give or
Okay.
take. Okay. Now, if you win, great, you've just doubled your money. Okay?
You should leave now.
You should leave now. Okay. If you don't, all hope is not lost. All you need to do is put $200 down, and you still have a 50% probability. Either you'll be up $100 if you win, or you'll be down. But don't worry, if you lose, you can just put $400, and then same 50% probability.
This doesn't sound good to me.
No, it's not. Okay, because you can basically have a 50-50 shot at earning $100. But if you have a series of losses all in a row,
Yeah.
you've basically lost your entire life savings, which is why it's not a good idea, and they don't allow you to do it.
Yeah.
So that's a negative self-reinforcing.
They don't allow you to do what?
It's called a martingale, and if they see you doing it, they'll typically stop you.
Because you're wasting all your money?
Because the odds are you will get to the point, if you keep doing this over and over and over again, you'll get to the point where you lose more than you can double down on.
I can't imagine that a casino would make you stop.
It depends on the casino, and it may be semi-illegal because
Wow.
mathematically, I mean, it's a really bad.
I know nothing about gambling, but wow.
Right.
Okay, cool. That's good.
Yeah, look it up on Wikipedia. It's called a martingale. And I think it's probably named after the first guy who did this to his detriment.
Sorry.
But that's a negative self-reinforcing feedback loop. The negative output gets re-inputted into the system and becomes an even larger negative
Jeez,
output.
Horrible.
Okay. Now that's not reinforcing loops. Basically lead to exponential growth if it's
Yes.
positive, or exponential decay if it's negative.
Yeah.
Okay. That's not the only kind of loop there is, though.
Okay.
Some loops are actually balancing. Okay. So, for example, pick up a tennis ball, hold it about your head, shoulder high, however.
Okay.
Okay. Drop it. What does the motion look like?
Well, it'll go like halfway, and then like half of that, and then half of that, and
Exactly.
then it'll stop.
And it'll finally stop, right? That's a balancing loop, a negative feedback loop. Okay?
Oh.
So because of gravity, it'll go down, but air resistance
Right.
is dampening the effect of every cycle, right? Until the cycle becomes nothing. Okay? Same thing happens in your body when you ingest sugar the insulin cycle in your
Right.
body is meant to, you may have a spike in your blood sugar and then insulin is released, which actually brings it back down to more of a steady type of state.
Okay.
Muscles are typically negative balancing feedback loops. It will loop in a certain direction until it stops, given a particular muscle position and all of these things. Eyes work the same way, vision works the same way. A lot of our, internal endocrine system stuff works the same way. It balances an input.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Kind of.
Kind of.
Could you explain the muscle thing again?
It's actually, and this is actually something that's talked about in great detail in Making Sense of Behavior by William T. Powers. But it talks about how, if there's some type of perception or signal that's outside of a control state, the moving of the thing dampening an error signal is a negative feedback loop. That's how we get feedback on how far something is extended or how something far is away from where we want it to be. Okay, so that's probably a little complex for this, but there are feedback loops that basically balance things out. It's called a balancing loop. Business example of this is what's called financial controls. Okay, so you have a report that tells you in all of these categories, marketing, cost of goods sold, all of these things that are important to your business, how much you spent last month and how much you spent last year, for example. And if you look at this report for this month's numbers and you say, holy cow, we spent 10 times the amount on marketing this month, or 10 times the amount on closing sales this month than we did last month, what the heck happened? And you find out that, let's say your business credit card was the victim of identity theft. Okay, that's an error signal, and you have a balancing loop to take that thing and bring it back down to where it's supposed to be. Okay, so that's a feedback loop. You're re-inputting, you spent money this month. You're re-inputting that into the system and getting another input.
Cool.
That's feedback.